What is going on, everyone? Thanks for clicking on this video. And the team we're going to be talking about today is the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders, they started off the season relatively strong, and then they kind of crumbled at the end. They ended up having the second overall pick in the draft, which, if you can't tell, that means you were the second worst team in the NFL, which, not a good season for them. But it wasn't looking awful at the start of the season. They started off 2-0, and after that, they were able to limp to 4-5, and they weren't looking that bad. And then they traded Montez Sweat at the trade deadline at the midseason, and after that, it kind of just went downhill from there. Because once they started 4-5, they didn't win another game after that, and they ended up going 4-13 as a result of that. And that also resulted in their head coach Ron Rivera getting fired because 4-13 is really bad. And you could just tell when he was coaching that the game is just past him. He was a good coach on the Panthers, and he used to be good with the Commanders. He was okay, but this season just proved that he was ready to retire, and he got fired. And they ended up bringing in head coach Dan Quinn. He was a former head coach, and he was most recently the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. They brought him in to be their new head coach. I've got some questions about him, but they definitely needed to move on from Ron Rivera. He just was not getting the job done for him. And let's see, they were able to bring in free agents Austin Eckler from the Chargers. He had a bad year, but maybe he'll rebound with them, the Commanders. They also brought in Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks. They were able to sign Marcus Mariota as well. They also got Dante Fowler Jr. He's a defensive end. He should fill that Chase Young void that's been missing for the past few seasons when they traded him to the 49ers in 2022. And they also got a new center and guard. Their center is Tyler Biadasz. I don't know how to say it. He's going to be on the screen, but I can't say his name. Tyler Biadasz, I think that's how you say it. He's going to be their new center. And they also brought in Nick Allegretti. He's going to be a guard. And the reason I bring offensive linemen up in this video as opposed to other videos is the Commanders had one of the worst offensive lines in football. And those two guys are going to be huge for them going forward if they work in, Washington. And their final free agent they brought in was Brandon McManus. He used to kick for the Broncos and most recently the Jags. And I think he kicked for the Jags last season, and he's going to be their new kicker moving forward, I'm assuming. And their departures, the players they had but don't have anymore. They don't have Sam Howell anymore. They traded him to the Seahawks. And they also don't have Curtis Samuel. He is on the Buffalo Bills now. Kendall Fuller is no longer on the Commanders. He's on the Patriots. Or not the Patriots, the Dolphins. And Antonio Gibson's on the Patriots. He's the one who's on the Patriots instead of the Commanders because he left them. But yeah, that's really for the free agency and the departures for this team. That's about where it is, and obviously they drafted Jayden Daniels. He's on the thumbnail, and they actually drafted Luke McCaffrey, and he is the brother of Christian McCaffrey, who is a very good NFL player in his own right, one of the best running backs in the league, and I believe this guy's a wide receiver. I think he's a wide receiver, running back, one of those two. It'll be on the screen, you'll see it. But, they definitely made a lot of moves this offseason, so you can't say that they're not trying to get better as a team. Some of the moves I think are questionable because I have my questions with Dan Quinn because he was not a good head coach on the Falcons. He was for a little bit, but then he kind of fell off. And then he went to coach as defensive coordinator. And to his credit, he was a very good defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. So maybe he can prove me wrong and play really good, or not play, coach really good for the Commanders. And as for Jayden Daniels, he's got a lot of talent, and if the Commanders can build around him, I think he'll be pretty good. And, just they can't do what they did with RG3. Robert Griffin III, they drafted him back in 2012, and they did just about everything wrong they possibly could have done with him. They also, I remember they drafted Dwayne Haskins a couple years ago too. They didn't do a good job building around him either. So can Jayden Daniels be the quarterback to break the cycle that is the Commanders' inability to draft quarterbacks? Because Sam Howell, they drafted him about 2 years ago, and he's already no longer on the team. And you just have to wonder, can this team finally draft a quarterback? Because despite them being 4-13 and the second worst team in the league, I honestly think they probably could have done better if they didn't have Ron Rivera as their head coach. If they had a solid head coach, they probably would have gone this isn't good, but 6-11, 7-10, around that range. So not as bad as 4-13. And I think Dan Quinn, for this first season as the head coach, that's around where I think he's going to be. He could obviously do better than that or worse than that, depending on if he's still the same Dan Quinn from the Falcons or if he's actually grown as a coach. We'll just have to wait and see for that. And as for their free agents they brought in, I think Austin Eckler, that's kind of a low-risk, high-reward one because he had a very bad season with the Chargers last season, so it's kind of you're just banking on a guy to get back to his old form, which is not ideal, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's worth the risk. Because when Austin Eckler is playing well, he is one of the best running backs in the league. They brought in Bobby Wagner. He's definitely past his prime, but he's still a solid player. And I think he'll be very beneficial for their defense, which has been struggling over the past few years. They brought in Marcus Mariota, as I mentioned. He's going to be a solid backup. I'm assuming he's not going to start. I'm assuming it's going to be Jayden Daniels and then Marcus Mariota is going to be his backup. It could be the other way around for all I know because the Commanders still have yet to disclose that, I believe. Or if they have, I'm not sure which one it is. But I'm assuming if they did disclose it now, it would be Jayden Daniels because a lot of these rookie quarterbacks are starting immediately. And I don't see that being any different for Jayden Daniels. I'm not saying he should start immediately. I think rookie quarterbacks need to sit for a year and really learn some, stuff about the NFL like they do. Because when you just take a rookie quarterback and throw him out there, you're kind of just asking for the worst. But at the same time, I wouldn't be too much against him starting either because they don't have a horrible supporting cast. Last year was kind of iffy because their O-line was one of the worst. But they do have Terry McLaurin, and he's the best receiver on that team by far. But he is definitely a solid receiver. And let's see, Austin Eckler should be back to his old form. And that offensive line being fixed is a huge one as well. They definitely have other receivers on this team that can step up too. I think Jahan Dotson, he's a receiver on the team. He's pretty underrated. I think he could take the next step with the right quarterback. And if Jayden Daniels is that quarterback, then he would most likely take the next step. And, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if he started, which I'm expecting him to. Because of the supporting cast, I mean, there's definitely certain rookie quarterbacks who I definitely don't think should start this season. But Jayden Daniels is kind of like a toss-up because he's kind of like the in-between because their roster isn't like the best in the league. But at the same time, it's not the worst in the league. So you could probably go either way with it. It's not like a Caleb Williams or a JJ McCarthy where their roster is like very good and they need to start immediately. But it's also not like the Patriots with Drake May, where the roster is one of the worst in the league, and you're kind of just throwing a quarterback out into the ocean and hoping he can swim back to shore. It's just like, just the judgment call there by the Commanders, either way, and they need to make sure they can be patient with them as well. That's one thing about a lot of NFL teams that I'm noticing. They do not have nearly enough patience with these guys. They don't understand that being a quarterback in the NFL is one of the hardest things to do in sports because you have to know like everything about the offense, and you get so worked up if a guy's not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or something like that. But you got to give the guy some time. Like, what the hell do you expect if all you're going to do is just throw quarterbacks out there, and if they don't work, just move on? And I think the Commanders are kind of bad about this too, because they did it with Sam Howell, who I don't think is as bad as what people say he is. He even started this last season out pretty solid, and then he kind of slumped to the end, but at the same time, so did the rest of the team. And if you have a young quarterback like that, and the rest of the team is not playing up to their potential, you know, it's going to affect his play. I mean, it's not like he's going to just carry this team because he's not Patrick Mahomes or anything like that, but you still need to be patient. And if they're not patient with Jayden Daniels, it's going to be the same old song and dance with this team just because they're just one of those teams who can't really draft quarterbacks that well. And we'll just have to see if the Commanders can do it right this time with Jayden Daniels, who I will give him this over Sam Howell. He is more talented than Sam Howell ever was. His arm strength is better. His mobility is better. And I think those are two big assets for a quarterback that are very important. Hence, I don't blame them for moving on from Sam Howell, but at the same time, they need to make sure that they coach him and just hope that not just hope that he's going to magically solve all their issues, because they have issues that they need to fix. But at the same time, if you can realize that as an NFL team and just accept the fact that you're not a Super Bowl contender yet and you are a couple years away, which this team is, I think they'll be okay. And it just depends how Dan Quinn does as well. If he's a good coach now, if he's going to be just like the end of the Falcons era where he was just one of the worst head coaches in the league. And really, it all comes down to coaching, and it all comes down to how they handle their rookie quarterback. And it also, I mean, this team, I said they'd probably go 6-11 or 7-10. I mean, they could sneak into the playoffs if things go their way. I'm not saying they will because I don't think they will, but they could if everything goes their way. Because, I mean, they brought in a lot of free agents, and if those guys that they brought in are as good as they hope they are, they could maybe sneak in with a 9 or 10 win season, and that would most definitely be enough to win a playoff spot in the NFC, because the NFC doesn't exactly have a gauntlet of Super Bowl contenders like the AFC does. So I definitely think this team has a bright future from this point. Now, can they continue to have a bright future? That's the question with Jayden Daniels on whether or not they develop him the right way. But as it stands right now, you have a number 2 overall pick who's got a bunch of talent, probably the second or third best quarterback. It depends if you think Drake May's better, but I don't think I don't think guys like J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Spencer Rattler or Bo Nix, like those guys aren't really better than Jayden Daniels. I think he's better than all of those guys. So they probably just wanted more athleticism, and Jayden Daniels has more of it than Drake May. So I'm assuming that's what they were thinking when they made that pick. But I mean, you just develop your quarterback correctly. I mean, look at the Texans and C.J. Stroud. They did it with him, and they made the playoffs in their first season. No one expected that. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but if you can build around your quarterback and he's really as good as you think he is, I mean, hell, you could make the playoffs and pull off a Texans-like turnaround. That's just going to be what the, standard is for what teams are looking to do. Obviously, not every team is going to do that because most teams don't really draft a guy like CJ Stroud or have a team built for success like the Texans did. And I don't think the Commanders do have as good of a roster as the Texans had this season, just because when you looked at the Texans before CJ Stroud, you didn't really see a lot of the players on that team that actually had talent. And their O-line was also pretty solid as well. And, I mean, there's definitely a possibility that could happen with this team, but you can't just expect that to happen every single year. That's one of those things where it happens like once in a while. It's not like in every season there's a team that does it, but you never truly know. Because if Jayden Daniels is really all that, he could, bring out the best in some of his offensive weapons, like CJ Stroud did for the Texans. So really, we just have to see how they do. If there's one thing that is not really going their way, though, is their division is very difficult because they have the Eagles and Cowboys. I said there's not a lot of Super Bowl contenders in the NFC, and the shitty thing for the Commanders is 2 of the Super Bowl contenders in the NFC are in their division, because you've got the Eagles, Cowboys, Lions, 49ers, and Packers, and maybe Seahawks, but you can't really. It sucks that 2 of them are in the same division as you are, and you aren't one of them either. It'd be different if the Commanders were a Super Bowl contender, but, I mean, if we're being real, they're not. I mean, they're just gonna win. They just want to build off of last season, or more lack thereof, or build off of their bad season, have a better season than last season. Terrible wording there. But you just need to tear it all down, which they kind of did. They took away their head coach that wasn't getting the job done. They replaced him with a better head coach. They brought in free agents to try and see if they can help their young quarterback turn the tables for this team. Just because of the lack of success this team has had. They actually haven't had a winning season in, I believe, 6 or 7 years. It's been a long time. And, their best season record-wise, and that I can remember, is they went 8-1. And that was not last season, but the season before. And, you just have to see if you can get back to your winning ways, because this team definitely has some great history when it comes to winning, and they just haven't been able to, figure that out in the 21st century. They've just been an afterthought when you think of the Commanders. But that's really all I got to say about this team. You got that young quarterback, Jayden Daniels, and you just have to hope he's the guy, and you also have to hope the Commanders don't, fuck up his development like they did with RG3 and Dwayne Haskins, and Sam Howell also, for that matter. We'll go ahead and transition to the game right here. It's actually a good game. As it's 4th down and 3, Cowboys have the ball. We'll see if they can pick this up, and they don't. as the Commanders in Madden have a chance to win this game. And with about a minute left, down 7, we'll see what they can do, if they can make their way to the touchdown, the end zone, and score, because that's what they need to keep this game alive. Right now it's 3rd down and 5, clock is moving, they're out of timeouts. Sam Howell back to pass, he's going to throw, passes incomplete. 4th down and 5, we have to pick this up if we want any chance to win this game. Pass is snapped, he's going to throw, pass is caught, and it's going to be a 1st down at the 23. 20 seconds left, clock is running. Sam Howell's going to roll out to the right. He's going to throw, pass is caught by Curtis Samuel, but he doesn't get out of bounds. Commanders have to hurry, and they don't have enough time. It looks like they ran out of time because the receiver couldn't get out of bounds. That's an unfortunate way for that game to end. But that's all I got for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, my next video is going to be about the Cowboys, and I will see you later.